They're not trying to be someone that upsets you. They're not trying to be somebody that's trying to change the world and turn it upside down and make it awful, just leave it the way it was. No, if we don't evolve as people, this is a very boring and stagnant world. Today is a new day. I am Nikki G, your host. Welcome to the Lone Doctrine, a safe space to bridge the gap between your authentic self and your mental health. We are your food for thought exploration station in order to make today better than yesterday. Hello and welcome back. I'm excited to have you here. We have been exploring the topic of identity and specifically gender identity. But I wanted to kind of take a step back and look at the big picture, because sometimes we can relate these unknowns with a sense of fear and a sense of defense and a sense of, I don't really want to know about those things. And that's when we cause friction. That's when we continue this cycle of this kind of lack-minded outlook on life and on people, which sends us on this merry-go-round and makes us repeat history that we probably shouldn't repeat. So I'm hoping by being here, by gaining the knowledge, by staying open-minded and exploring with me, we can understand all these topics of our own personal development, which then can help us accept other people's differences. So as we talked about gender identities, we kind of went over how sex is different from gender, and when gender has assigned things that were taught socially, and how we can fall into different categories of gender. I wanted to take today to share with you something I found from criticalmediaproject.org and why identity matters for us all. So let me ask you this. How do you identify yourself? And what is the most important part of your identity? Is it your sex, your race, or ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your class status, your nationality, your religious affiliation, your age, your physical or cognitive abilities, your political beliefs? Is there one part of your identity that stands out from the rest? Or does your identity change depending on who you're with, what you're involved in, and where you are in your life? Some key concepts of identity is a socially and historically constructed concept. I'm going to repeat that. Identity, gender identities, this idea of who we are, is a socially and historically constructed concept. We learn about our own identity and the identity of others through interactions with family, peers, organizations, institutions, media, and other connections we make in our everyday life. Key facets of identity like gender, social class, age, sexual orientation, race and ethnicity, religion, age, and disability play significant roles in determining how we understand and experience the world, as well as shaping the types of opportunities and challenges we face. Social and cultural identity is linked to issues of power, value systems, and ideology. The media uses representations, images, words, and characters or personas to convey specific ideas and values related to the culture and identity of that society. So there's key words in there: identity, social construction, norms, ideology, intersectionality, stereotypes, prejudice, bias, sexism, racism, heterosexism, classism, ageism, ableism. So how do we understand this identity thing a little bit better, and how it's really affecting not just our day-to-day, but our relationships, our workplace, our family, and just our interaction with the perfect stranger? The answers to that are clearly dependent on many factors. Society has taught us to think about our identity in a singular term. I am female, I am male, but also as multiple and intersecting parts. I am Latinx, I am American, I am Polish, I am Swedish, I am German, I am Australian. All of these different facets. Most importantly, these questions lead us to consider the meaning of identity beyond who am I? These questions frame our individual identities in a broader social historical context and in relation to other groups. Part of understanding our identity, therefore, means understanding how we fit in or don't with other groups of people. It also means being aware of the fact that some groups have more social, political, and economic power than others. When we think about identity, we may focus on cultural markers, things like clothing, or biological or physiological markers like the color of skin. However, it's also important to understand that our identities are comprised of shared ideas, of shared ideologies, biases, and ways of seeing the world around us. Our identities, therefore, are socially constructed, and our biological attributes are only one part of many parts of who we are. But where do these shared values or ideologies come from? Again, the answer is unfortunately not clear-cut. In many cases, we've learned and internalized these values over the course of our lives from family, peers, role models, schools, organizations, government, etc. The media also plays a prominent role, a big-time whopping role in creating meaning, shaping our values, defining who we are, and establishing these norms. Quote, quote, if you can't see me. Bonk. These values are powerful because they generally come from places of power, but also because we internalize them and take them for granted. They seem natural and the way things should be, and in turn, shape the way we see and understand the people, objects, practices, and institutions in our lives. Our gender, race and ethnicity, sexual orientation, class, disability, religion, and age can play a significant role in determining whether or not we have social, political, and economic power. That's the sad truth. While many also need to acknowledge the way historically ingrained prejudices are built into existing institutions and structures, and consider how they create barriers and limit opportunities. Given the role our identity plays in the way we experience and accrue power, it's important to understand the potential obstacles, discrimination and oppression that some groups experience over others. For some, the experience of being a particular sex or sexual orientation from a particular racial or ethnic group or socioeconomic class involves reoccurring and even systematic or institutional prejudice. This prejudice can manifest in unequal opportunities, rights, or wages, as well as being stereotyped, marginalized, or persecuted. Myself, we don't have enough time for me to list those things that I've experienced as a lesbian, as a female. And by all means, this is not a woe is me. This is my experience in life is very different because of how I look, who I am, and who I love. Simply the things that we should all have the right to be. There are many terms that we hear throughout our life to determine these identity inconsistencies. Sexism, racism, heterosexism, classism, ageism, ableism, and those are just a small handful. These terms reflect beliefs that there's one superiority of one identity over another. Men over women, whites over non-whites, straight over gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender, wealthy over other classes, young over old, able-bodied and mentally fit over disabled and mentally ill. Historically, the terms have been used to call attention to discrimination and bias. They further challenge ideologies that perpetuate this hierarchy structure and limit groups' opportunities and freedoms. Intersectionality offers us an additional frame to understand the way multiple systems of oppression intertwine across individuals' experiences because of their identity. Now, you might disagree, and this is a big topic of what's going on. And ironically, it falls into the personal development topic we chose this month of identity, of trying to find our true self. And that's what everybody's just trying to do. They're not trying to be someone that upsets you. They're not trying to be somebody that's trying to change the world and turn it upside down and make it awful, just leave it the way it was. No. If we don't evolve as people, this is a very boring and stagnant world. And in the end, those things have nothing really to do with their actions. So if you think, well, I'm part of the norm and this is just for the LGBT plus community, no, it's for all of us. We need to break down these things. We need to open our eyes and open our hearts to understand our differences, to listen to each other's stories, to really try to empathize, and most importantly, have a little humility and willingness to know that we don't know everything. I'm the first one to admit that. And this may all upset you. This may be, oh, I'm so tired of hearing all of this, but it's important. The moment we start getting tired, the moment we start being quiet, is the moment we start reverting and repeating the history that should never, ever be repeated. So as we go through these topics, I want to encourage you to dive in, to explore, to fill your cup, to find that peace of mind, and to really embrace your authentic self, and more importantly, share that with the world. Share it and be patient when someone doesn't understand. I know it may seem unfair, but it takes a lot of patience, because when we have that patience and we share that knowledge, we start to break down those walls and the world becomes a better place. So go back to the beginning of the month. Start to dig through. Go back to the month before that and the month before that. Heck, we have more than 300 episodes. Dig in, fill your cup, and keep fighting the good fight.